Good afternoon. Welcome back to the Law&Crime Network. I'm Linda Kenny Bodden, and I will be your host for the next 2 hours in this amazing case we've been covering, Ohio versus Brooke Skylar Richardson. She's known as Skylar, even though her first name is Brooke. The state of Ohio says that she murdered her newborn baby. But today we heard from the father, we heard from the doctor, but what we haven't heard is yet a cause of death. So while they're getting a new witness on the stand, let me bring two of my three guests in for the day. Ecleynne Mercy from Georgia and Gigi from Florida, right?
Yes, how you doing, Linda?
Yeah, how are you? Both. Let me start with you, Gigi. You're not underwater. Thank you, God, for that, because you're going to help us walk through this case. Have you seen the state proving a cause of death yet?
No, not yet. I was able to catch both opening statements today, and the prosecution, though, they are able to prove that there was a death in this case. They have not been able to prove that the cause of death was by Skylar. And she's been very open that this is a stillborn death, so the state's going to have to overcome that.
So Gigi Gonzalez says the state hasn't overcome it. If I heard her right yet, Ecleynne Mercy, my favorite lawyer from Georgia, one of my favorites from Georgia. I can't say they're my favorite. You're my favorite right now, okay? Have you seen the state overcome the cause of death at this point?
Yeah, I have. I have, because
okay, I'm listening. I'm all ears for this.
Here's the thing. It's her action. Her actions afterwards and her actions beforehand. So she didn't want the baby. We don't, because the corpus is like that, we don't need to know exactly to prove murder. You don't need to know exactly what actually happened. You just need to know that she caused the death. After she had the baby in her bathroom, never called 911. She had the doctor who told her she was pregnant, and she didn't ask for adoptive services. We knew that baby wasn't going to make it, and it just so happens the baby did.
Well, boy, Ecleynne, let me tell you, you are giving the prosecutors summation right there. But let's listen to the person on the stand, a crime scene supervisor, the next witness. Okay, so this is the crime scene supervisor talking about a buccal swab, which is really taking a Q-tip going inside your cheek and taking skin cells out and getting DNA. So I'd like to now talk to Stan King. Stan, I mean, I'm a little off my feed when one of my best defense attorneys in the world, Ecleynne Mercy, says, of course the state has proven that she killed the child. She didn't say what degree. But what's your take if you don't have a cause of death on a baby death case? Does the jury say, okay, we're gonna go with the science? Or does the jury say, no, we're gonna go with the horribleness of the situation?
You know, I respectfully disagree. I think that cause of death is critical. And to the degree that she can maintain that this baby was stillborn, obviously we know that burden is still on the state. They can make a lot of circumstantial arguments to insinuate that child was living when it was born, but I don't know if they're going to ever be able to prove that. And I would think and hope that the defense would be able to prove that, notwithstanding all the horrific things or things this young lady may have done that might have been immature or ill-advised, there is no proof that this child was living when it was born.
Yeah, and
I think that's critical.
Ecleynne Mercy, let me go back to you before I go to Gigi to argue with you a little bit. Okay, so the state came out first early on and said, oh, she burned the bones of the body of the baby because some forensic anthropologists mistook, the coloration of dirt for burning. And they had to retract that. And they also came out initially and said it was stillborn, and then they had to retract that. So if you have all these retractions by the state, isn't that evidential that the state is just grasping at whatever straw they can to say this is murder because that's what they want it to be?
Well, no, I mean, you have no criminal case is perfect. And we know often that the state changes things. And I can see them null processing or dismissing the abuse of a court. But here, the facts are here. She did not want to be pregnant. All right. She didn't want to be pregnant when she found out she was pregnant. And then she had a whole baby. She had contractions. At that point, you knew you didn't have diarrhea. That was a whole baby coming out of you. You should have called 911. What she did was she gave the baby a burial in the backyard like a puppy. That's murder. All of it equals murder.
Well, Stan's here shaking his head no, so I'm going to bring Gigi Gonzalez into this. Gigi, okay, all right, so Ecleynne just said she buried the baby like a puppy. Well, you know, that's not necessarily a bad thing because we've all had to bury our animals, but what do you say to Ecleynne when she says it doesn't matter that there's no cause of death? Gigi, I'm going to Ecleynne, you got to sit back. I know you want to Gigi.
Yes, okay, so I would say we have to look at this holistically. This is an 18-year-old girl who found out on April 26th that she's 8 months pregnant. Then within a week, at that doctor's appointment, she found out that she was due in July. Then she's supposed to make all of these life-changing decisions within a week of each other before the baby is given birth. This is a very tumultuous time for a 17-year-old girl who found herself 8 months pregnant one morning. And it's a lot of pressure to ask of her to have all of the answers into everything right, considering her lack of education and maturity in this matter.
Well, she just turned 18. I'm not sure that little difference will matter. But let's go back into court right now and listen to what the testimony is from the crime scene supervisor. As you know, we are covering the case of Ohio versus Skylar Richardson, a cheerleader accused of murdering, according to the state of Ohio, her newborn infant. They are actually in a sidebar, and those of you who follow trials know that that happens all the time, but that gives me a chance to discuss with my guest what has happened. There you see her on the screen. She doesn't have that blonde hair she did in the earlier pictures, but Stanley King, you've been through childbirth with your family, so to speak. I mean, childbirth by proxy, I would like to call it. But here, the defense this morning, when they cross-examined her doctor, her gynecological doctor, who told her she was pregnant, okay? They talked about something called intrauterine growth restriction, oligohydramnios. They talked about heart rates not changing if you have an infant that's in danger. They talked about bleeding in the third trimester. They talked about how an eating disorder affects health. When you're hearing this as a jury, even if you haven't had a child, do you think that maybe the defense is paving the way for their expert?
I think so. I think so, because obviously those are complicated terms. And I think that childbirth is a very natural process. Sometimes they say left alone, a child will come into the world without the intervention of medical attention or anything like that. But I think once they enter these types of medical terms, I think sometimes the jury can get a little bit confused and so forth, and they're kind of complicated. But I think it's helpful for the defense, because I think once they have their experts to explain why this young lady would not have fully been able to comprehend all of these things, I think it's possible that it could be very helpful. At the end of the day, you have to sympathize her. I mean, they have to find some kind of way to make her sympathetic.
Well, let's see if they're doing that right now in the courtroom. They're showing pictures of her bedroom and pictures of her. Let's look. Okay, so this is a good time for us to talk. That is a reaction that Detective Smith is saying he got, indicating to him that there had been blood by using this chemical. Sometimes it was called Luminar. Luminol's Blue Star is a proprietary chemical, proprietary brand. Let me go to Gigi. Gigi Gonzalez, who is in Florida, safe from Dorian at this point. Gigi, that is a reaction to heme, which is iron in the blood. What does that tell you, if anything, about the child's cause of death?
It doesn't tell us anything. It doesn't even tell us if it's that baby's blood. All we know is that the Blue Star test revealed that there is blood there. We don't know whose it is. And the defense isn't denying that the baby is dead. They completely own it. They are explaining the cause of death to be stillborn. And there's blood associated with births. There's all sorts of reasons why there would be blood on that carpet. So to me, I don't think that it tells us anything as far as what the cause of death is.
Okay, Ecleynne Mercy. All right, you think this child, the state has proven their case on cause of death already, but let me go to this specific Blue Star, this luminol. Now, we all know, and you and I know, that you can bleed at any time, and if it's left behind, it will light with a luminol or a Blue Star, no matter when the blood occurs. If that's the mother's blood totally, how does that tell you that that came from the childbirth?
Well, it doesn't. I mean, we already know that the issue is not whether, the child dies, it's whether the child was stillborn at the time. So I feel like the state is just putting evidence in that there was blood that she did have. But my issue is we don't know. As Gigi said, we don't know whose blood it is. But even if it was the mother's blood or the child's blood, call 911. That didn't happen because she didn't want this baby. It's like we just have to keep, at the end of the day, it's a jury question to figure out whether the child was stillborn or not. And based on the incidences beforehand and the things that happened afterwards, I still think that the state has a good shot.
So indeed, Stan, what the state is arguing that, we interviewed her a lot of times, and according to the defense, too many times where she said, I didn't kill the baby's stillborn, the baby's stillborn, the baby's stillborn. And after a number of interviews when she is now 6 weeks and could be into postpartum depression, she then says, oh yeah, I may have done something because she was confronted with a forensic anthropologist report, which was wrong, that the bones had been burned. Now, how does that help the state, or does it hurt the state?
I think it hurts the state. I think one of the problems I see so far is there's these multiple theories floating around that the state's advancing. And I think that proves that they don't really know what happened. They're trying their best to say she killed this child and this child was born alive. Now, again, showing blood, they know that in and of itself, that doesn't mean that, that's that baby's blood. And if it is, no one's denying that. It could be that baby's blood. That doesn't go any closer to bringing us to the point where that baby was alive and in fact she killed her. And I guess the other point, the state is trying to introduce evidence to make this jury believe that that this woman knew what she was doing and she was in the right state of mind and she purposely did this. Well, I guess in certain cases, in the case of an aggravated assault and manslaughter for, it's a little different. But at the end of the day, it's their burden. They have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that this young lady had a baby that was alive when it was born,
and that she killed it. Right. And indeed, before we go to break, if our listeners and our viewers out there noted that the bed had been moved. Why? It had been moved away from in front of the window, and the defense argued an opening statement, by the way, if you caught that she wanted to look at the child's grave. So let's think about that as we go to break.